Hey, Joe Zarzaur here with Dr. Malone. COVID is obviously creeping back up in our news cycle these days, and I think people are paying a little more attention to this Omicron. Am I saying that right, Dr.
Yep.
Malone?
Yep.
And so I think it sounds scary if you watch the news for more than 10 minutes that, oh no, we got another wave of this, blah, blah, blah. But the good news is for everybody that's been vaccinated, the vaccination is actually going to protect you to a large degree, even with this variant. And it sounds like the only people that really need to be concerned are the folks that have not been vaccinated. Am I wrong about that?
That's the number one group that should be concerned, yes.
And the biggest thing that data-wise that you can look at that verifies what I'm saying and what Dr. Malone's getting ready to talk about is that in the past, when you had a variant that was serious, like Delta, you saw a rise in infections, you saw a rise in hospitalizations, and then you saw a concomitant rise in deaths. And with this variant, you're seeing a rise in infections, not a commensurate rise in hospitalizations, and certainly not an equal rise in deaths like there were with the Delta variant.
Mm-hmm.
So the good news is that, especially in counties like Dade County, where there's 80% vaccination rate, there is a rise in infections, but there's not a rise in hospitalizations nor a rise in deaths. And that is going to be the case for everybody that's been vaccinated. But I think, as everybody has heard, if you're unvaccinated, you are still at risk for COVID. And this variant is going to make you at higher risk. And I guess the only new information I'm going to have before I turn it over to Dr. Malone is that I also understand that the antigen test that you can buy at CVS and Walgreens and wherever, the one you can do at your house in 15 minutes or whatever, if you've been vaccinated, the Omicron variant is not going to affect you to such a degree that it's going to show up on the antigen test. So you could test negative on the antigen test, which a lot of people are doing, and they're positive for Omicron. They even have symptoms consistent with COVID, and they're not showing a positive test because the viral load is not high enough to register on the antigen test. And so they potentially could spread the Omicron virus or the COVID virus, but the Omicron strand, to somebody that has not been vaccinated and cause that person issues, especially during the holidays. So my concern is that if you got people that are unvaccinated, bravo that you made it this far without dying, right? But you may have some challenges over the holidays if you're around people that have been vaccinated, even if they're asymptomatic, even if they've done a home test. They potentially could be carrying the virus. And I would hate for anybody to get this unvaccinated and have to deal with potential consequences. So now that I've given you my part, let's let Dr. Malone, who's a physician, talk about what he thinks about Omicron and what he thinks you should and shouldn't do over the holidays.
Got it. So a year ago now, we did a very similar video, talked about the first variant.
Yeah, that was Delta?
No, Alpha.
Alpha, okay.
Yeah, Alpha and Beta, okay.
Alpha, Beta.
Yeah, so it was like B and it had a series of numbers after it.
Okay.
But you were in September of 2020.
Right.
There was no variants then.
Right.
We are
unadulterated COVID.
Exactly. We're variants down the line, almost 12 months down the road. Back then, we talked about, obesity, heart problems, lung problems, smoking, all that, right? We don't talk about that anymore. We talk about vaccinated or not.
That's right.
Okay? It's under your control.
Right.
So it's more directly under your control. Again, 12 months ago, we talked about, this person's got to get their heart condition under control, their lungs or whatever. This involves going to a drive-through pharmacy and getting the shots, and so be it. So anyhow, the best thing you can do is be vaccinated. Encourage the people around you to look at getting the booster if you're, eligible for it at this point based on when you got your other shots. And what Joe mentioned is, people are basically getting a cold. And the numbers and the reports that we're seeing they're cold-like symptoms, okay? It's runny nose, headache, fatigue, maybe a sore throat, okay? That sounds like a cold to me. It also sounds like it could be influenza. It sounds like it could be mild COVID, any number of things. So that doesn't mean lock yourself down if you have any of those, but be aware that it could be influenza, which we're also seeing right now. It could be the new variant strain, whether or not you're vaccinated. So what do you do? If you have no symptoms, really there's no reason to test unless you've had a direct known exposure to someone who is floridly positive, they're sick from it, okay, not because, oh, someone, the next door neighbor was sniffling, so I need a test. So they have to be positive for you to say, okay, I need to get tested. So that's number one. Number two is if you are symptomatic, the antigen testing you can do at home and all that, make sure you follow the directions, get a good sample. The user error is probably the number one thing that is the limitation of this whole testing. But as Joe mentioned, and we're going to share this with you, the algorithm that came out yesterday in Lancet was really good explanation of testing protocols, is if you are negative on an antigen and you know you were next to someone or you're symptomatic, that doesn't mean you're free to go. It means, do you need to do another confirmatory test like a PCR, or do you need to do an antigen the next day? So as Joe had mentioned, you may not have that antigen titer that's high enough to ping the test positive. So the indication is to do it a day later to see if that has risen up. In the meantime, you treat yourself like you're positive. So you're staying home from work, you're locking it down, you're avoiding other people. So you need to pursue that. But if you've ruled COVID out, it could still be influenza. We're starting to see the influenza. It's influenza A, and it's right now showing that it might be evasive to the vaccines. That's, yeah, and that's early data. But again, it's the same thing we just talked about. If you're vaccinated and you had the flu, if you're vaccinated for influenza and you get the flu, same thing. It's mild, okay, as opposed to having viral pneumonia in the hospital. So it's, even though it's evasive to the virus, you're still protected to a certain degree. So keep that in mind. But I expect that we will start seeing some influenza reports alongside the Omicron variant and alongside Delta, which is not going away.
Right.
So those are the three things to watch out for. I guess just be sensible around any loved ones gathering this season. I think that making your educated choice on when you should be around people or not, it should be the same as what it was before the pandemic. If you were sick, you felt not well enough to go anywhere, you stayed at home.
That's right. So. All right. Well, we certainly want to wish you happy holidays after all that negative stuff, but we're trying to give you information so you can use it in your best interest and you and your family's best interest. But we also want you to understand that we're not making any judgments about whether or not you should or shouldn't be vaccinated, but we are telling you that the science is real. And so if you're not vaccinated, that's your own choice. Just understand that there may be consequences and impacts on others around you or yourself. So anyway, hope you all have a good holiday. We will obviously be here working around the clock on our personal injury cases. If you need us, you can call us at 855-HIRE-JOE, or you can find us on the web at ZarzaurLaw.com. Thank you.